Hey, this is Artie Cabral.
This is Sarah Nofke.
This is Stefan Boltz.
This is S. Elliot Brandis, and you're listening to 30
Minute
Author Interviews
with Preston Lay.
Woohoo! Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. Before we jump into it, I just wanted to let everyone know that 30 Minute Author Interviews has started a Patreon account. So head on over to patreon.com/legendarium. That's Patreon, patreon.com/LEIGHGENDARIUM. And check out the different rewards that we're offering. One of the rewards actually started yesterday. It's a brand new podcast episode called 10 Questions With. So if you sign up, you'll be able to get that episode. And now, on to 30 Minute Author Interviews with Scott Moon. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of 30 Minute Author Interviews. Our guest today is Scott Moon. Thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We start out the podcast here with a segment we call Two Truths and a Lie, where you will tell me two truths and a lie about you, and I have to figure out which one is the lie. So I think I'm 50-50 or something like that so far. So if you could, do you have two truths and a lie about yourself so I can try to figure this out?
I might. I've kind of thought maybe I should do like all lies and just see but I thought that might be cheating. So I figured I went ahead and tried to think of some. So we'll go. The first one is I've been writing for over 30 years. I once saw Brad Pitt eating at Denny's. Okay. And I play the guitar.
Okay. Well, I know you play the guitar. I've seen pictures, so I know I know that one's true. So it comes down to the writing or the Brad Pitt. I'm going to say that the lie is you haven't been writing for 30 years yet.
Well, actually, I have been writing for that long. Yeah, actually, I'm going up on 35 years.
Oh, wow.
I started writing them when I'm 12.
Okay.
I started writing very seriously when I was 12 years old. I did a lot of reading and gaming and stuff, and my mom actually said, we should write a book for kids your age. And so we started writing a book then, and I was like always trying to get a book written and published since then. So it's been a minute.
Oh, wow.
Since I started doing this.
That's pretty cool. So dang, I was hoping the Brad Pitt thing was true because that would have been awesome.
I picked that one because I haven't seen Brad Pitt eating at Denny's. I used to spend a lot of time there because I'd work some part-time jobs there. Mm-hmm. But I have seen Keanu Reeves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did. He was looking pretty rough that night, but that was a long time ago. I think it was back when he was doing his rock band thing, and he was on his world tour.
Oh, okay.
And him and his entourage come straggling in there, and I was like, man, I'd like to get his autograph, but I said, no, I'm just gonna leave him alone. That's
funny.
So anyway, yeah, Denny's is a great place, I guess, especially real late at night after the bars close and whatnot.
That's right. So how long have you been playing guitar?
Not quite as long as that. I think I was in high school. A friend of mine and I were watching MTV back when that was a brand new thing. And I yelled upstairs to my mom. I said, hey, if I learn to play the guitar, will you buy me a guitar? And they said, sure, because they probably didn't think I was actually going to learn. So I bought my own. I did a bunch of odd jobs and bought this cheap little thing off the Sears catalog and started playing and kind of stuck to it. And for a while I practiced. I practiced up to 12 hours a day. Until I was like 19 or 20. Mm-hmm. So for about 4 years, that's all I basically did is play the guitar and the bass guitar. And then I realized that's kind of it's a tough calling.
Yeah.
And I've been in a garage band with some friends at work for probably 10 years or almost 11 years. And I finally put that to rest like a month ago because I decided that I can only do so many things. I wanted to concentrate on writing. So I still play a little bit.
Okay. Well, for those that might not know who you are or what you do, why don't you kind of tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Basically I write, I always have a day job. I work in law enforcement. I've been doing that for almost 20 years and I've done some interesting things there. I don't normally talk a ton about that because I don't really know that people are interested in that per se. But I've started writing like we said a long time ago, I mostly wrote fantasy. I've written some urban fantasy, which kind of mashes some of my life experience into a fictional format. In my job, people always say, well, you should write that down. You got so many stories. You should write a book. People always say that to cops. And I'm like, yeah, they're saying that to me and 400,000 other cops. And so I never wanted to write that. And I don't know, there's just lots of issues. And I didn't want to like embarrass my friends. They could say, well, you're writing about me in that. And so after I'd been in the job for about 10 years, I finally broke down and wrote my first story that was related to law enforcement. I was thinking kind of like, John Grisham used his experience to write these things, and maybe I'll create a new genre.
Right.
But what I thought was I want to make sure this is clearly fiction. So I put magic and dragons and demons and alternate worlds in there and had a lot of fun with that. So that was my first published work. And then I started writing some military science fiction because that's one of my favorite genres to read. And that. So that's pretty much it. I married with kids, and I work 2 jobs, and I do some writing, and we do a podcast over at Keystroke Medium with Josh Hayes. That's pretty much it. Not super complicated for me at this point. Depending on which little rabbit trail you want to go down, I guess I could probably make it complicated.
Right. So do you still have any of those stories that you wrote with your mom back when you were 12?
She says that we do. I hand wrote them.
Okay.
And I think I wanted to be a writer long before then, because I remember at Christmas I'd always want a blank like journal, because when I was like young enough that I couldn't tell the difference between a book you bought in the bookstore and a blank journal, I thought, well, if I write it in a book, then it will be a book, and then you can buy it from the store. And so I've always got notepads and journals and stuff since I was probably 6 or 7 years old, because I always wanted to write an actual book. And in a 6-year-old's mind, writing it in a bound journal type book is an actual book, because it doesn't look like a pad of paper. Right.
Were you a reader growing up, or were you mainly looking at writing?
I like to read. I wasn't, and I'm still not. I'm a slow reader. And part of that is because I daydream a lot. And so I start reading, and if I get to a scene or a group of characters I really like when I watch The Walking Dead, I'm like, I could do that. That'd be cool. Maybe I could be in The Walking Dead. And then I'll daydream all these different crazy scenarios or whatever. And so I don't read really fast. And sometimes I want to read it perfectly. I'm not really a perfectionist, but when I read, for some reason, I will skip back. I have a lot of back skipping. If you study speed reading and that sort of thing in general, you'll know that one of the things that slows people down is when you read through a sentence, but you skip back because you think you missed something. I do that really bad.
Okay.
And editing your own work doesn't make that habit any less.
Right.
So I read slowly. I got seriously started reading. I was about 11 or 12, or maybe around there. It's kind of a blur. But my dad started paying me $1 a book, and I was reading the Black Stallion books. I can't remember the name of the author who wrote those, and he'd pay me $1 a book. And we did that for about 6 books, and then he stopped paying me, and I kept reading somehow. I don't know what happened. I think I got cheated in that deal.
That's
whatever.
Funny. That's funny.
I think I'm going to send him a bill.
Yeah, there you go.
After the show. Hey, Dad, I've been reading for many years now.
That's right.
I'm going to need $10,000.
I'll take it paid out over 12 months.
Yeah. Any way you want, you can get me a gift card or something. I don't know. Just load it up.
That's funny. So as of we're actually recording this on January 7th. You just had a book launch today. Dragonland is the 3rd book in your Son of a Dragon Slayer series. Why don't you kind of tell people what that, the non-spoiler, what that series is about?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So Son of a Dragon Slayer, it's a book I wrote over several years, and it started out as a straight police procedural or a suspense thriller in a law enforcement setting. And I wrote almost the whole thing. And I was actually on a special task force. We were looking for a serial killer, which it sounds kind of melodramatic to say that, but that's one of the things I have done in my career is I was on this task force. At the time, I was in the gang unit.
Okay.
And the gang unit in our department works hand in hand with gang felony assault and homicide. They're almost the same thing. Matter of fact, they kind of cover weekends for each other. They have a rotation onto which one of their bosses is going to handle it if something comes in. Mm-hmm. So when, and I'm always hesitant to talk about this because I don't, the person we were looking for is really repulsive, and I hate to give him any type of credit or bring up this character's name because he's really bad, and I know that better than some because I was able to look at some of the evidence and things. But so we were on these. It was an 11-month special assignment, and I would sit around on these surveillance things, watching cemeteries and places where we thought the guy might show up and do things. If you ever read any real crime fiction, you'll know that they kind of have this trophy mentality, and they want to gloat and things like that. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of special assignments with a lot of downtime, and I would think about what makes people do these things and what's the nature of evil. And it's whether you're in law enforcement or any career, you kind of need reading for me, and movies is a way to make sense of the world, kind of filter it out, and to kind of almost cathartic, I guess. And so I thought a lot about that, and I wrote another story, an unrelated story called Little Soul Jars, and it was basically about this sorcerer who captures these souls and puts them in these jars because he wanted to experience ultimate power over another entity. Mm-hmm. And then as time progressed, I merged those two stories, and then it became more of an urban fantasy. And at the time, there was no urban fantasy genre. And I was like, I don't even know who is going to read this. What is this? It's not Stephen King, but it's not fantasy. And I wrote it anyway. And then as I was kind of getting done with it, then the urban fantasy genre came to life. And I thought, that's perfect. The problem is that urban fantasy, as most people see it now, is not really – there's different levels to that. Well, a lot of it's kind of more romance.
Right.
And this is not like that. This is more like urban fantasy if you had kind of a roughneck version of Indiana Jones or something. It's more action than romance. So anyway, so the story as it eventually evolved to was about a police officer who he's not a detective. He's not a special investigator. He's a beat cop that's kind of been around the block a few times. And he starts getting hunted by this sorcerer. And there's these people that are being made soul slaves and different things. Without getting into lots of it, he finds some underground cage fights where he has to fight a demon, and it gets more. And he starts to realize that the reason his father abandoned him is because his father's actually from the next world over, a place called Cleor or Clear, depending on how my narrator of my audiobooks pronounces it. Because I make it's like any author, you make up a word, nobody knows how to say it.
Right.
But so as that's kind of like the setting and some of the inciting incidents. Well, I'll just give you one. In the very first chapter, Michael Prim's the main character. He encounters this person who he thinks killed a detective and the detective's kids. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the third book, you'll figure out whether that was true or not true and all the details into why he thinks that. And then he goes on this kind of hero's journey to figure out who his father is, who his mother is, whether he belongs in this world or the next. And then he has there's multiple points of view. So there's several different kind of story arcs in it. But so that's what it's about. It's a urban fantasy adventure where you got modern day people going into a magical world. That's one of my favorite places to read and imagine. So that's that series.
And one thing you did with that is you redid the covers, and you used a service called 99 Designs. And you and Josh over at Keystroke Medium did a whole hour episode on this, if not a little bit longer. Yeah. But can you shorten it down a little bit? And can you kind of tell people what 99 Designs is, and then is it something that you would consider doing again for your any of your other stories?
Absolutely. So the covers of those books, the first one I did myself using Microsoft Paint, and that was a disaster. And I very quickly realized that was a bad idea, because it didn't reflect the genre at all. And then I found ProBookCovers.com, which is still around. He does really good books for a good price. And he did my original Dragon Badge and Dragon Attack. And actually he did one for Dragonland, but by that time I was wanting to expand a bit. So I decided I needed to relaunch the series, given that it was in the genre and it wasn't getting as much traction as I wanted. And I really think the covers needed to be more reflective of the stories, because the second generation had basically had a big badge kind of with some fire on it, and one kind of had a dragon in the background. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go try 99 Designs. I'd listened to the self-publishing podcast and some of those people, and they do their hilarious ad reads for 99 Designs. Mm-hmm. And it was always on my agenda. So without going too deep into it, you can do 99 Designs is a place where you write a brief for whatever product you want to get designed. So it can be a book cover, it can be a logo. I think they probably make about anything that you can make digitally on a computer and somehow distribute. So I did that. You write a brief. I wrote a brief for my books, and there's an entry level price, which is like $2.99. And then I went ahead and I got all the bells and whistles. I was going to pull out all the stops. But what I learned is you can do contests or polls where you put up the different covers and you get people's feedback, which is really good for engagement of your readers or your audience. Mm-hmm. And then you pick round two. Like you select which artists are going to the final round. And people sent me dozens and dozens of variations of their design. And it was really hard to narrow it down to the final, because the first day you're like, I hope somebody submits a design.
Right.
Because one of the other things I did is you can guarantee your contest. And that just basically means that you say, I'm going to pay somebody from this contest. I'm not going to back out and say I don't want it. Mm-hmm. And so I was spending the money no matter what. Right. And so I was like, man, I really hope I get a good one. So the first day in 99 Designs, you'll be stressed out, and then you'll get a first couple, and you might get one you really like. You're probably going to get some that are going to make you question your sanity because they're not that good. And you get depressed, and you're like, oh, have I made a horrible mistake? I could have fed the kids.
Right.
My kids are running around barefoot with no shoes because I'm doing this contest, and now I got this terrible book cover. But then very quickly you start getting the serious ones, because what I think happens is the people who put a lot more work into them, they don't just drop something on you in the first 20 minutes of the contest. They read your brief, they decide if they want to do it, and then they work on it for half a day or a day or two, and then they submit it. And so you really had to wait a couple of days before you see where it's going. And so then you submit the finals, and then you go through the same process with that. If it's your first 99 Designs, all the other artists can see what all the other artists do. Mm-hmm. Unless you ask 99 Designs to make it a blind contest, which I recommend, because otherwise everything looks the same.
Okay.
Because they just copy off each other, or some of them do. So you do that. But yeah, it was a good experience. I really like what I got. I spent quite a bit more money than I had planned, because when I liked the first cover, I went ahead and worked with the same artist for the next two without doing the contest. And then I actually got one for another series called Death by Werewolf, which is another book I was relaunching with a new title. And I got that cover, which I really liked. So I would recommend it. You don't have to go that way. There's a lot of good designers out there for sure, but it was an interesting process. It makes you think about what you're trying to accomplish with your book cover.
Now, I remember you putting up on Facebook that people could go vote, and I remember voting on it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was neat how I could leave you feedback on each design and why I was giving it the rating I was giving it. And so I think the one I ended up liking the most is what you went with. Mm-hmm. But I also, if I remember right, the guy that ended up doing the final cover, or no, not the guy that did the final cover, but one of the guys that did the Dragon Badge, you said did Death by Werewolf. That was a cool cover he did for Dragon Badge, though, too. So you got some real good ones when it came to voting.
That brings up two really good points. And I can, of course, only remember one. But when you do the contest, you can go invite artists, and in the best practice, you do the research on the 99 Designs, and they recommend that you invite as many artists as possible. So you go browsing through 99 Designs, and you find people that you like, and you click the little invite button, say, hey, I'm holding this contest, come check it out. And then I did that for probably 30 or 40 people, and 10 or 15 of them then submitted a design. And the individual who did Death by Werewolf. His name is, and I can't pronounce it. His last name is Markovich. Let's just say that.
Okay.
He sent me one, and it looked like all the others, and it followed my briefing almost exactly what I described I wanted. And I messaged him back, and I said, because they give you the feedback. Oh, the other thing I thought about was what you mentioned about feedback in the polls. So I'll come back to that.
Okay.
But I sent Markovich, because they all have like cool handles on 99 Designs. His was Pager 6 or something. And I said, well, I appreciate you submitting the design, but can you send me something like this one? And I indicated one of his that I liked. And then that's where that design came back. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. I love that. And it was hard. I immediately knew I was going to have a hard time picking, because I had several that I would be happy with at that point.
Did you end up going with the most voted on cover by your fans, or did you end up going with a totally different one for Dragon Badge?
I did go with popular vote, and I'm such a nonconformist and can be kind of difficult and stubborn, according to my wife, I guess.
Right.
But I did it for specific reasons, and part of it relates to what you said about the comments. So I did the polls, and I got lots of responses, and a lot of people wrote in their comments. They'd say, well, this one is too dark. This one makes me think of a comic book instead of this. This is the wrong genre. This one makes me think of, this other book. And I would read through all those comments, and it's kind of funny to look back now, but I agonized over that, because, it was like it meant the world. I'm like, it's just a book cover. You need to calm down. But the majority of people seem to come. The majority consensus is what the book I eventually chose for Dragon Badge most accurately represented the genre and the experience a reader would have in the book. Mm-hmm. And things. Now, the hard part, and we talked about this in our show over at Keystroke Medium, was it's got to look good as a thumbnail. Mm-hmm. The most important thing to me, I think, almost is if it doesn't look good as a thumbnail on Amazon or Nook or Kobo, then you're done, because people are going to see 50 books the size of a thumbnail, and a lot of people aren't moving beyond that. Mm-hmm. So it's not just judge a book by its cover. It's judge a book by its tiny little cover.
Right.
So it's got to go. So, but what made it so miserable for me was that I had picked one that I loved from a purely artistic standpoint. And I just fell in love with this cover, and I'm like so happy. I was like, this is it. I don't know why I even keep doing the contest, because this is obviously the one I'm going to use. And I put up the poll, and nobody liked that one. It was dead last every time. And I would try to skew the results, and try to nudge people in the right direction, and
right.
add my vote to the one I like and downvote the other ones, even though they were good, but they weren't the one I wanted to buy. And I was like, maybe I ought to listen to these people, because a lot of the people that commented were very knowledgeable about books and about publishing, and some are writers, some are publishers, editors, podcasters. And I was like, I better listen to other people. Mm-hmm. And that was I'm glad I did. So
I remember when I voted, I can't remember if I ended up leaving. I think I left some comments, but I know at some of them I was like, let me re-edit this one so I don't sound like a jerk when I'm talking about this cover. So, but yeah, I think it came out amazing, and we'll of course in the show notes you can see the cover for Dragon Badge in the show notes.
Yeah, I was super happy, and I got the paperback version of Dragon Badge and love it. I was worried that the Dragon Badge looked good, but I was like, what's he going to do for the next two?
Right.
And actually that's a team, and I recognize or acknowledge them. They're in the acknowledgments of the newer versions of my books, the people who did the design. And I was worried, like, okay, they did book one, but okay, now have a dragon attacking a city. See how you do that.
Right.
I'm like, and then I was like, okay, now have a magical land with castles and dragons and stuff. And obviously people from our world, and see if you can make that work. And they did, they came through on all three levels. So, and they're very quick too. That's the other thing too, is you get your result back in days most of the time.
Dragonland's cover reminds me in a way of a Nicholas Sansbury Smith cover with his Extinction Cycle.
And I thought that too, and I love his stuff. He's a great writer, and he's got great book covers. And I think some of it's the color,
yeah,
and there's that military aspect. One of the funniest things about this series is there's a character. He's not really it's hard to tell if he's a villain or a good guy, but his name is Travis England is his name. And he runs this giant kind of non-governmental organization, paramilitary group. And he has a lot to do with the invasion of Clear because he has his private army. And so I don't know. The point of that is it's just funny because his name is, and I don't know how I pick names sometimes, but there's a lot of play on the name England because you'd be like, well, we're going to get some help from England, you know. Right. It's funny. I crack myself up.
You also have a book coming out in February, on February 7th, called Bayonet Dawn. Would you like to give people kind of the non-spoiler book blurb on that? Yeah,
that I finished a trilogy, the Chronicles of Ken Roland, which is a whole nother big, long topic. And I wanted to work on another military science fiction because I love to read it. I like to write it. And it's a very underserved genre right now. And it's a good way to get in touch with a lot of readers. So I'm kicking around ideas with my writer friends. I talked to Josh and I talked to actually Richard Fox a little bit about, why I think some of his stuff works. And he made some suggestions on some things I should try. And so I quickly sat down and tried to bang out some outlines and do some research. And then I went all completely off the reservation on all those things. So I apologize if they think I'm disregarding some of their ideas, but I started doing it. And one of the things that I always started out as being a very much seat of the pants, organic type writer, and I've become a little bit more of an outliner as time progressed because what I've learned is when you write by the seat of your pants, it's fun, but it's hard to revise and edit, and it's really hard to write the second book because you have no legible notes or structure, and you basically have to reread the book several times. And by the time you've already written a book and edited it, for years, and you're about done reading it. And so I thought maybe if I planned, it would be better. So, and Josh has always encouraged me. He says, you need to plan and structure and do all this stuff because he's more of a planner. And so I took the advice and I hammered out an outline and I started writing on it, and I really loved it. So the basic premise of Bayonet Dawn, it's kind of a family saga, military adventure, revolves around a young man who has his two twin siblings who are teenagers are stolen by this alien race, and he needs to go find them. And he's also had all these dreams all of his life of being in the military. And there's a bunch of different other inciting incidents and complications, but basically it's hard to travel unless you're extremely rich or you've been in the military or some other public service. And so he goes into the military and becomes part of this war that's going out of control on a place called Brookhaven. So it's just a Starship Troopers, Dune-esque, Dune type military sci-fi. And I first made my own book cover for that just as a placeholder, and then I got Tom Edwards to do the book cover. I bought one of his pre-mades for Bayonet Dawn, and he reserved a slot for me, or I don't know how you say that. I made an appointment, I guess. He's booked out like 6 months. So if you want to have Tom Edwards do your book covers, you have to say, okay, well, I'll need one in, like now it would be June or July would be the first time you could get him to do one. And so we had him on the show a couple months ago, and I said, I really want one. He said, okay, I'll slot you in April. And I said, well, my book's coming out in January or in February. So when he did some pre-mades, I grabbed one of those that looked really good. And so I got the pre-made for Bayonet Dawn. And then the next book in the series, I'm going to try to do in a couple of months later, and it's going to have another Tom Edwards cover. And I'm really excited because he seemed to like the ideas I had for the book. So my tagline would be for Bayonet Dawn is Band of Brothers in Space, or D-Day from Space was what I told him. Okay. So that's kind of where you get. And then some of my main antagonists are not really villains. I don't like to use villains. I like to use antagonists and protagonists. But they're kind of this, it's kind of a complicated race, but they have some, I call them the samurai mask giants because they kind of have that look to them. Anyway, but it's cool. Hopefully I'll get some people to read it, and then people can tell me if I'm crazy or not.
The cover, though, as you were talking about, is gorgeous for Bayonet Dawn.
Oh, yeah.
I pulled it up on my phone. I actually get a better view of it on my phone than on my computer. You can click on the cover on my phone, and the detail on that ship is just incredible.
Yeah, that's all about Tom Edwards. Some people may know who he is, but he does a lot of military science fiction and other genres of book covers. But he creates those ships in 3D and they're all original. That's the thing I like, is it's an original. It's not a stock art that he cut and pasted out of somebody else's thing. He created that ship for that book cover, and he sent me like the book cover and then the ebook and then like the banner and all these different things. And yeah, I love it. And I usually keep it a screenshot of it up while I write, because it keeps me motivated.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. You did a good job getting that one.
I really like it. I can't wait to see it in paperback.
And one thing I meant to bring up when we were talking about 99 Designs, and I'm going to bring it up now. When you were talking about it, I remember from your when y'all talked about it on Keystroke Medium, one of the things I thought was very interesting about that too, besides the whole process, is you. I can't remember if it was you or Josh that mentioned, or maybe it was both of y'all, that you can actually tell the people, I won't know stock art. So that way people can't just go grab some stock art, throw some effects on it, and give you a book cover. You can actually get an original book cover from 99 Designs, which I thought was definitely worth mentioning here as well.
Yeah, that's all comes back to the briefing. You write a briefing, you describe what you want, and I got that idea about no stock art from Josh. That's what he said, and I put in there I would prefer original art. I eventually, and you can also message the artist individually, but you can message all of them at once. And so after about 4 or 5 days, or 2 or 3 days, or whatever, I said, okay, some stock art is okay if it's done well. And so I changed it a little bit. So you can get different things. You know, a lot of good covers are done with stock art.
Yeah,
so,
there's some great people out there.
But I love artists, though. I'd like to, you know, everybody wants to have their own Frazetta cover made for their book, or something like that, obviously.
Yeah, and you have 2 other series I just want you to be able to talk about as well briefly while you're on here. You have another series out there called The Chronicles of Ken Rowland. And then you also have another series out there called, I'm trying to find it real quick, The Grendel Uprising. You just want to kind of tell people, kind of give them again what those different series are about?
Sure. The Chronicles of Ken Rowland, basically there's a character, he was in the military, and he was given the task of committing genocide against a race of alien monsters. Sounds like an easy thing to do, but he found it hard. And he basically he managed to win the war because he was supposed to blow up the whole planet and just kill everybody. And he wound up kind of making them, rendering their planets not capable to do space travel. He did enough destruction by setting off all the nukes, but he didn't commit genocide. Well, this, of course, it caused him problems because now all these creatures are looking for him. So the basic, without going as long as I did on the others, Chronicles of Ken Rowland is about him and how he's running away from the fleet because they're mad at him because he didn't do this. The Reapers are wanting to kill him because he's an enemy of their race. And then there's some other sci-fi intrigue that goes on before all these forces kind of coalesce back where they started on Hell's Breach, which is a planet of the Reapers, and they have kind of a final showdown. So that's the Chronicles of Ken Rowland. It's a 3-book series. The Grendel Uprising started out, I was going to write a series, and I'm still working on it, a serial type experience, and the Grendel stories are about 15 to 20,000 words each. There's 2 of them that I have available right now. And the premise of that is a lot easier to explain. Basically, it's set in a universe where there are so many worlds that are inhabited that people will buy the world and then like make it a single purpose world. Like they have golf world, they got like football world. They have a lot of historical reenactment worlds. Mm-hmm. People like, I always liked Rome. I want to go live in a place that's kind of like, and so they would go on vacation in Rome that would be stocked with actors and people and settings. So it's like you went back in time. Mm-hmm. but some of these went bankrupt. And so Grendel is a planet that went bankrupt, and it was a Viking world set around the time of the around 900 AD in England and Scandinavia. And it went bankrupt and was forgotten about for hundreds of years. And so now it's kind of mutated into whatever would happen if people forgot they were part of a historical reenactment world, and then some characters come and they hide there, and there's a bunch of political intrigue.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. It's a way to, it's my time travel workaround. One of them. It's like, I want to do time travel, but it's not really time travel. It just kind of feels like time travel.
Okay.
So
where did your idea for that series come from? Because the Son of the Dragon Slayer sounds like you use some of your your law enforcement experience with. So where did the idea for that series come from?
I have it was one of those long term ideas that kind of boil around in your head. I had the idea of a historical reenactment world for years, and I still have other things I want to do with that idea. Mm-hmm. And I've always been fascinated with that type of concept, because you could really do almost anything with it. But yeah, I just had that idea of a historical reenactment world, and I had several kind of story starts and different things. I like the Patrick O'Brien books and the Horatio Hornblower type things, or if you've ever read Naomi Novik's dragon books, where it's like Napoleonic era warfare but with dragons. Okay. And I love those books, and I also love the Master and Commander series, and I wanted to do that, but I thought, I'm not that good of a historian. Maybe I need to cheat a little bit, and I'll kind of make my own world, and that way if I kind of go astray a little bit, nobody can crucify me because I didn't have the exact historical model set, Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, and then at the time I started writing the Grendel Uprising story. I was deeply involved in watching the Viking series on the History Channel. Mm-hmm. So I was binge watching that over and over again. I thought, I'm going to have to write something that has Vikings in it. Oh, okay. So
there we go. So as we mentioned throughout the podcast, you just had Dragonland come out this month, and you've got Bayonet Dawn coming out in February. So you've had 2 books in 2017. So what else can your readers expect from you for the rest of 2017?
2017, my plan right now is to publish 6 books in the Bayonet Dawn series. I've got the basic outline for where the series is going to go, and I imagine that writing them will be easier because I've done most of the world building in the first book. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to try to publish several more books in that story world. And then I'm kind of playing around with some pen name stuff that I will probably also do, but those are still a little bit new. I'm not sure I want to get anybody's hopes up because those could die a horribly non-creative death any second now. They're fun so far, but they're kind of almost like a relief valve. Like in between projects, I can go write and those are going to be basically romantic thrillers with more of an emphasis on a thriller, because I've tried to write romance several times, mm-hmm. Because I know I like to write. I don't care and I read in every genre, mm-hmm. But I don't quite have what it takes, I guess, to write romance. So, but I can write but I know the basic kind of concepts and rules, and I love to write thrillers and I love to read thrillers. So I'm gonna try some of that this year.
Okay, and you said you're gonna put that under a pen name?
Yeah, it's going to be under a pen name.
Okay. Can you tell us your pen name, or do you prefer to keep that?
Oh, yeah, it's ST Moon.
Okay.
Is what I'm using. That stands for suspense thriller.
Oh, I was thinking maybe it was your initials.
No. It could almost be my initials.
Yeah, because
it's not quite.
I know authors that do, they have their initials as one genre and then their actual name as a completely different genre. So
right.
I thought it was your initials. So I'm curious, you're an author. You said that you're hoping to do 6 books the rest of this year with the Bayonet Dawn series. You have Keystroke Medium. You said that you have 2 jobs and you have a family. Mm-hmm. How in the world do you find time to write? Because y'all are doing some big stuff with Keystroke Medium this year. So how do you find time to write with everything else going on?
the biggest way is that I cheat a lot. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, I've been writing for so long that if I get pushed into a corner with trying to produce something, I have literally millions of words on my thumb drive. So, like, for example, I wanted to publish a book every month in 2017. Well, I'm like, I'm 99% done with Dragonland. I guess that's getting published in January. Then I'll be ahead of the game. Right. So that's the main thing. I think that it's all about choices. I love video games, but I haven't played video games hardly at all for probably 2 years. I love TV, but I only generally binge watch it in these series that I like. I'll take like one day and watch like 15 episodes in a series. And that's why I can't follow like The Walking Dead. I have to wait till it's done because I can't wait till the next week. And I'll get interrupted. A lot of my career, I was on call 24/7. So the chances of me sitting down and watching the same show at the same time every week were basically nothing. And then I'll watch TV either with the kids or with the wife, just kind of relax. But I don't really watch much TV. I don't play video games. I try to be real intentional about my time. I've started recently trying to write first thing in the morning before I do anything else. But that doesn't always work. It depends on what happens. So that's the main thing is you got to make choices about what is there's a book I read recently called something about execution. God dang it, what is it? I could probably pull it up here on my phone and look at it. But basically, it talks about having a wildly important goal. And so a wildly important goal is the number one thing that you need to get done to start. Actually, it's not focused on the why you're doing something. It's focused on the how, because a lot of times you come up with a great idea and you focus only on what you should do or why, but the how is like, well, how do I do it? And how you do it is you have a wildly important goal. So my wildly important goal is to produce 12 books this year. So the number one, my first action is to write. So that's come first. So the name of that book is The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's by Sean Covey, Chris Mackenzie, and I can't see the rest of the authors. And then there's one called Deep Work by Cal Newport. It has some of the same ideas about focusing on the thing that's going to get you where you want to go.
Well, here at the Legendarium, we like to end each episode with a segment that we call the Legendary Ending. Some of these questions aren't necessarily writing related, but I also got some fan questions to ask you that some of your fans sent in. So we're kind of gonna go back and forth between the two. So the first one is, what songs are currently on your writing playlist?
That's a fantastic question, and I won't be long-winded. When I write Bayonet Dawn, I don't know why this happened, but I had bought the sound. I only listen to soundtracks, usually movie soundtracks, or I like classical music, but sometimes it can make me sleepy because it has the lows and highs. But if I just pick like a soundtrack from a movie, the score, I'm talking about the score, not with any lyrics. I don't like any lyrics in my music when I'm writing. But for Bayonet Dawn, I started out listening to the Call of Duty 2 soundtrack and there's that samurai movie with Tom Cruise in it.
The Last Samurai?
Yeah, I listened to that. But then about 2 months ago, I only listened to Pacific Rim. And that's the only thing I listen to. And it sounds boring, but what happens is and I only listen to it when I'm writing. And so when I put in my headphones and I hear the Pacific Rim music come on, I immediately get in the mood to write this story. So that works great for me. Okay.
The first fan question comes from Ralph Kern, and you've probably touched on this some already, but he wants to know, does Scott think his day job as a cop adds to his writing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you see different people and you see people at their best. You see a lot of people at their worst. You have a lot of life experience. It detracts a little bit because you have a bad sleep schedule and you work too late and you can get kind of cynical, but it really does, because you have to have empathy for people that you may not like, and you have to be able to be neutral when you want to not be neutral. You got to treat people, because law enforcement is supposed to be based on the rule of law. it doesn't matter how you feel about an incident. It matters what you can prove and what happened. And so you have to be able to keep yourself calm and all those things. And one thing is it allows me to do things like this podcast, because I might not have been able to do one before I spent 20 years having to talk to people that I was nervous about talking to. Mm-hmm. You know, once you've knocked on a door at 2 a.m. and woke somebody up to ask if they saw what happened, you know, you get pretty good at talking to anybody.
Right.
And kind of going with the flow. So yeah, I think it definitely helps. It's a hard job, but it's really rewarding, and I think it has helped.
I'm sure my listeners are tired of hearing this. That's actually what I did my senior project on. We had to do, when I was in high school, our senior project was you had to do a report on what you wanted to be when you graduated high school, what career you wanted to do, and you had to go interview somebody in that field, find out all the requirements that, you know, it took, and what was the pay and all this other stuff. And when I interviewed the sheriff for where we lived, he had mentioned that when you go through your training, you have to get tased and pepper sprayed. And I was like, yep, that's not for me.
Yeah, I'm out.
I'm out. Something else.
I was like double dumb, because I went into the police reserves and I got pepper sprayed. And then a few years later, I got on the full-time department, and we got pepper spray day came, and I said, do I have to still get sprayed? And they're like, oh yeah, you still got to get sprayed. So they sprayed me. And like, as soon as I was done, the other people I knew from the reserves were like, you didn't have to do that a second time. Like, thanks for telling me, as I'm blowing snot everywhere. Yeah, it was very, I would actually rather be tased than pepper sprayed.
Really?
I don't like pepper spray. Because when you get tased, if they get you with a full lockup, you can't do anything. But as soon as it's over, it's over.
Okay.
When you get pepper sprayed, you're blowing snot, and then you go home, you take a shower, and you wash your hair if you have any. Not my problem anymore. Right. And it goes in your eyes, and it's just a miserable, sucky experience.
So the next question is, if you were stuck in a zombie apocalypse, which one of your book characters would you want to be stuck with, and why?
This one is actually an easy question. I would be stuck with Rebecca LaCroix. And the reason is because she commands a mech unit in the Chronicles of Ken Roland. Mm-hmm. And she's just a complete badass. And so if you're going to be around zombies, you should have somebody in a mech unit that can just, you know, annihilate an entire division of zombies. You know, and she's a pretty cool character too. She's one of the absolute most fun characters I've ever written is Rebecca.
The next fan question comes from Josh Hayes, and he says, of all the genres you write in, which one is your favorite?
Oh, you know, and it's funny. I think probably fantasy, even though I haven't published any straight fantasy, but that's my roots. It's where I started, and I really like it a lot. You know, I like listening to suspense thrillers, but I'm not a master at those yet. But when I write fantasy or read it, I just really feel like I'm at home. So I love it.
Okay. The next one is, if you were stuck in a zombie apocalypse from any character, from any media source, comics, books, movies, television shows, whatever, who would you want to be stuck with, and why?
Oh, that's harder. You know, there's so much out there. You'd have to be stuck with somebody that you could not only defeat the zombies with, but you could, you know, hang out with, because there's not going to be a lot of other people to hang out with, I imagine, and stuff. So, let's pick out. I'll get in so much trouble for answering these questions. Probably any of Angelina Jolie's characters, or maybe Wolverine, I guess.
Okay.
Or you know what? Probably Dwayne Johnson, because he's a funny dude. I don't know if you ever followed him, and he's also apparently could kill some zombies.
He probably could.
Yeah, he seems pretty down to earth. You know, I always have a thing where I don't really want to meet people that are famous, because I'm afraid that like they'll have a bad day and then I'll be forever ruined. Like, man, that guy was really a jerk to me. He's not my hero anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, so anyway.
So the next fan question comes from Scott McGlasson, and he wants to know. He says, "I would like to know what wax he uses on that epic melon."
You know, I could tell by your chuckling this is probably going to go someplace awkward and stuff. I like to. I've been asked that question a lot, in my day-to-day life, and I think it's just my natural personality just shining through.
It's your awesomeness.
No wax. It's just pure sunshiny goodness and clean living shining through that melon.
There we go. So Nathan Heistad and Mike Cameron actually both sent in the same question. They want to know which single book that you've written are you the most proud of and why?
That's almost that's so mean. Why would they ask me such a hard question? That's really difficult. It's almost always the book that I'm currently writing.
Okay.
Is usually the answer. I wrote, let's go. I'll just give you a couple quick ones. The Death by Werewolf was the most intense writing thing. I was working for the Exploding Missing Child unit when I wrote that, and I was in a very dark place personally, and you might be able to tell that the bad guys in that one are really bad and the good guys are really bad. So, and it hasn't got a lot of traction. It's probably just too much for some people. It's not as dark as some things that are out there, but that was a hard one to write. It took me a long time. I really am enjoying the Bayonet Dawn that I'm writing right now. I mean, it's Bayonet Dawn. The book I'm writing right now is something where if I was couldn't get published, they suddenly said indie publishing is now impossible. And as a matter of fact, nobody's ever going to publish anymore. I would still write it because I enjoy everything about it. And I feel good when I'm writing it and I get excited. So that's probably the answer. So the one that's the most proud of is the one that nobody's seen yet.
Okay. And then Mike Cameron also wanted to know, he says, did he ever find out the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
I did not. I have not.
That's funny.
I know that it's important, and it's especially important in fantasy if you're going to ever come across a castle full of French guards in England that want you to not give you the Holy Grail. So,
I do have one last legendary question I want to ask you in the legendary ending, because I think it'd be interesting to hear your answer with one of your book series. If you had a time machine, where would you travel and why?
I would travel actually there's a lot of places I'd love to go for the pure magic of them. Because I'd want to see something brilliant and beautiful and exciting. And I'd like to see where we changed as humans and stuff. But I think, and this is kind of fits some of that, but not so much. I would go to the World War II era Earth because it's hard for me to really conceive what that must have been like to go through that time. And not just on the military front. You read history, they mostly talk about the military stuff, but everything was different. It's hard to imagine people going without, like people, because they'd have sugar rations. I mean, you can imagine what would happen if today, if we said, by the way, we're having a sugar ration and nobody can have sugar right now.
Right.
Or pantyhose. And it just seems like the world was changing in such an interesting way. I would probably go someplace in the 40s around then and see what that was like.
Okay. And so the question that we're most famous for here, a penguin walks through that door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say and why is he here?
Yeah, I think when this is my answer to this is probably not going to make be quite as funny unless you know who I'm actually talking about. But I think he would say, so you got this penguin, he comes sauntering through there, the lights casting behind him, there's some smoke rolling through the bar, and he's going to say in an angry manner, I can't do it, I'm not good at voices, so I'm not a book narrator, but basically he's going to say, where's Dirty Harry and why did he unfriend me on Instagram?
That sounds good.
I know somebody who has that nickname. If you're from around here, he's like local famous. It would be kind of funny. And I guarantee he's not listening to this podcast.
You'll have to get it to him. And before we leave, do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think I could talk about a lot, but the biggest thing is it's important for everybody to give themselves permission to have a dream in life, and and to not predefine it. Your dream can be simple, your dream can be complex, but it's okay to own it. We, as people, whether you're a writer or a professional of some sort, it's easy to get, when I grew up in the age of nonconformity, and everybody's like, I'm being a nonconformist, and then we'd all dress exactly the same.
Right.
I'm a nonconformist, so I'm going to rip my jeans like everybody else is ripping their jeans.
That's right.
But the thing is, and I've always had all these goals. I started out, I had a teacher that said you can be anything you want to be, and I, of course, thought that meant I can be everything I wanted to be, and you can't do everything. Mm-hmm. You can do a lot, though, more than you think. But the biggest thing is have a dream. Don't be afraid to pursue the dream, and don't feel like you got to explain it or apologize to anybody. It could be anything, and if you give yourself permission to get out of your own way, eventually you'll get there. I think that is 100% true.
Okay. And where can our listeners go if they would like to learn more about you or your stories?
The best place is scottmoonwriter.com. That's my website. I pretty much funnel everything through there. Also, keystrokemedium.com. Josh Hayes and I, we do some podcasting and shows. And so you won't hear me talk nearly as much over there because I mostly just ask questions, sit back, and just let everybody else do the work. So, but yeah, those are good. You can never go wrong going to one of those places if you want to connect with me.
Well, we'll put links to all those over in the show notes at thelegendarium.com.
If you go to my website, there is a way to sign up for my newsletter. There's a pop-up, and as you go through that newsletter process, there's different ways to get on my advanced reader team, and I would encourage people to do that because you can get free books, and all you got to do is read it. It's kind of like where I would like you to give a review, but you're not required to be on the advanced reader team, and people give me a lot of love that way. So I encourage people to do that.
Well, I'm going to head over there once we're done recording and sign up, and I'm starting Dragon Badge. Well, I started it kind of yesterday, but I'm going to definitely start Dragon Badge this evening as well. So
awesome. I'm excited to see what you think.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for taking time and coming on 30-minute author interviews, or in this case, 60-minute author interviews. Well, guys, that's all the time we've got for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to 30-Minute Author Interviews. We hope you come back next Wednesday and every Wednesday for a brand new episode. Head on over to legendarium.com and check out the show notes for this episode. Scott Moon is giving away a pair of audiobooks, Book 1 and Book 2, in his Son of a Dragon Slayer series. So head on over to the show notes and find out what you need to do in order to get registered. And we'd like to give a shout out to a couple of our Patreon subscribers. We'd like to say thank you to Diane S. Loftus, Third Scribe, and Maggie Stewart Grant. They have supported 30-Minute Author Interviews over at Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/legendarium. That's patreon.com/LEIGHGENDARIUM. And check out the different rewards we have. We have t-shirts as rewards. We have a special Patreon-only podcast called 10 Questions With, where we're going to be asking authors 10 questions, and many other rewards. So thank you to those three for supporting us on Patreon. And until next time, guys, remember to stay legendary. Oh, screwed that one up. Blooper reel.